Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm your host, Phil, along with John and Logan. Today is episode number 95, closing in on 100. On today's episode, we'll be talking about shop-made tools and something new here at Woodsmith. Hope you enjoy the show.
This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been the trusted source for all your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects, you'll find it all at Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
All right. First up, something that's new, and we need to have Chris on to talk about this again. But we launched something that we call CNC Base Camp here at Woodsmith, something that Chris has been working on for almost a whole year now. For people who are familiar with the magazine and plans, he designed a shop-built CNC, which is actually really freaking cool. And it's been a really popular plan, and there's been a lot of interest in that style of woodworking. So he wanted to help kind of connect the dots and get people started on it. So it's a website and monthly YouTube series that has usually centers around a project and then some techniques and discussions about how to put your CNC to use. So it's a totally new area for me, so that's why I want to have Chris on the show coming up here to talk about it with a little bit more expertise than what I have.
Yep. Chris is basically our hype man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what, we have 3 or 4 episodes up right now, or 3, 4, something like that. But yeah, I've been kind of waiting for this too, because we always ask Chris to do stuff for us on the CNC, and now maybe we can learn something and do it ourselves without screwing it up too bad. No, maybe.
No. I think so, because I know that they're like Dylan's been interested in doing more CNC stuff, and
yeah, I don't think it'll replace our normal woodworking, but it's definitely another tool to have in your tool bag, or to accentuate the projects that we're already doing, or help with building. So
I'm excited about it. Chris does a great job on video, and he has the heart of a teacher.
Yeah. The patience of a teacher. He has patience with all of us.
Yeah. He definitely puts up with us.
Patience or a high pain threshold. I don't know what that.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So the other thing we would talk about is the fact that we started filming season 16 of the Woodsmith Shop TV show. Now, these won't air until next fall, so it's like living in the future.
Yeah, we're living in 2022.
Yeah. So far, no pandemic.
Or is it done? Is it done in 22?
Sure.
Decide we're not continuing with it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Called it off.
All right, good.
You heard it here first, folks.
Been waiting for that.
Yeah. It's like just waving it off. And the episode that we filmed was on making shop-made tools. So we selected 3 tools to make and demonstrate the techniques for, which leads to the idea of, and the question of, who else has made their own tools? Like, obviously, there was a good chunk of ShopNotes magazine was making your own tools. Yeah. And even in this upcoming issue of Woodsmith, Chris has a shop-made 20-inch disc sander, which is super cool.
And scary once it starts. It's a beast.
Yeah. Well, he had designed a 12-inch disc sander years ago, and that one actually had a pivoting head, so you could rotate it around, and it had like a don't know, a chuck or arbor attachment on the backside to do like a flap sander or buffing wheel.
See, I was thinking pivoting. You were going into like a sanding turntable style.
Floor sander.
Floor sander, yes.
But that one was only 12 inches, and he wanted to do another disc sander, but, like doing another 12-inch disc sander, I don't know that necessarily served a purpose. And it feels like 12 inches is like the max commonly available size that you see around. Like there's those disc belt sanders where it's anywhere from like a 6 to a 8 or a 12 inch.
Yeah.
Because what was that Powermatic one that we had?
That's probably a 10 or 12.
Yeah.
I guess I was looking for a ruler so I could hold it up and see. Yeah, I'd say it's probably a 12 inch.
Okay.
Or I just pull up the Powermatic website and see.
Right.
It's silly.
But stepping up from a 12 to a 20 inch turns it into a super tool.
Yeah.
It looks like. Oh, where's it at? There it is. Yeah, that one is a. It is a 6x48 belt and a 12-inch disc. So
okay,
yeah, but when you add that extra 8 inch, it's 20 inch, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
it's 20. It's different class, I guess.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's almost like an industrial tool, and then when you start looking at those, then the price is way high. So what's interesting is Chris uses a 220 motor on there, just because of getting that 20-inch disc to spin.
Yeah. Well, it's a 2-horse motor, which I think is funny because the belt sander or edge sander he just designed, I say just, God, it's been over a year, right?
Way longer.
It's that one only used a 1-horse motor.
Right.
So, and that thing's got a lot of inertia that disc sander has a lot of inertia. Once it starts moving, it's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a flywheel.
Yep.
Yeah. Like a freight train.
Yep.
Takes 2 radial miles to come to a complete stop once it gets going.
That's fair, yeah.
But it works really well. That was pretty cool once, when we fired it up and just how smoothly it ran, and it's quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So buying a 220 motor, 2-horse 220 motor is going to cost some money.
Yes.
But compared to a commercially made 20-inch disc sander, you're still saving quite a bit of money.
So a quick Google has told me that the Jet 20-inch disc sander is $3,700. The Powermatic is $3,300. There is a Grizzly for $1,800, but that's on sale.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Chris paid like what, $500 or something like that for that motor.
Yeah, and I mean, just because we buy a new motor, because that's kind of what we have to do.
Right.
You can find used motors pretty reasonably. So like, if somebody was keeping an eye out for one, they could probably find a used one on like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist for $100 probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure that there will be folk that will wire a 110 motor on there.
Oh yeah, completely.
And it would probably be fine.
Yep. It looks like go to Northern Tool, you get a Leeson 3-horse for $390.
Oh, see, there you go.
So yeah, so a couple $100 for a motor.
Yeah, not much more for materials for that because it's plywood or MDF or however you want to make the case and housing for it. But the only thing that you really want to spend some money on is nice plywood for the disc itself.
Yeah, and probably melamine for the top surface, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the parts are fairly small. I mean, they're larger panels, but they're like a lot of them are offcut size. So
right,
you could probably throughout the year like piece this thing together off your plywood scraps.
It's walnut and oak,
yes,
and maple and Baltic birch.
Yep, whatever you
just
have.
Hammer paint it, and nobody knows the difference.
Yep. Slap a Powermatic sticker on it, call it good.
Design your own custom power tool sticker.
Yep. So, I guess when I kind of presented this topic, the shop-made power tools are fun, they're cool, and they work well if you have a good design. Now, I'm not going to say that staying on the disc sander idea, there are guys that will turn their lathes into a disc sander or a drum sander.
Right.
Not saying they're not going to work. Not saying that they're not going to work well, but a well thought out design like Chris's is going to be better. But I'm approaching it more from a hand tool standpoint.
Okay.
Because that's what I enjoy, is really making hand tools. Like, I guess what I'm getting at is you can make a shop-made power tool, and you can make it work very well. Our friend James Hamilton, Stumpy Nubs, he's made a couple. He had a drum sander, I think, like a thickness sander he made that worked really well. Will it work better than a mass-produced one, I guess, is my question. And that's a question for you two. Do you think that is there any reason why Chris's disc sander wouldn't work as well as a factory-made one, or do you think a factory-made one will work slightly better? What's your thoughts?
It's hard to say. Like, will it wear better over time or not? But I think a tool like, say, the disc sander, it's pretty simple. There's not a lot of like precision with a drum sander. You're trying to get to a certain thickness. This is just a spinning disc of sand or sandpaper. So I think it'll work just fine for most people's needs when you're not trying to get like a precision, finish on your project. So I think something like that would work just fine for, price point to a professionally made, mass-produced tool.
Would you agree with that, Phil?
Yes, and because I think, yes, I would agree with that.
Okay.
There are some caveats to that in the sense that it depends on who's making it.
Yep.
If you take your time to put that together and, look at it as the fact that you're making, there's as much precision there as you want to build into it.
Yes.
Now, there's a point where you'll get to diminishing returns, like you'll spend hours and hours on stuff that doesn't really matter. However, you can turn that into a pretty solid tool. Like that edge sander that he made, and we have on the set in the TV studio. Like, I use that one all the time.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that's at least the equal of the Jet big edge sander that we have in the main shop. Now, that Jet has gotten way more use over many more years, but several years in on the regular use it gets that we use it for, it's proven itself. You have to add some oil to the bearings periodically, and clearly change the belt when it's necessary to change the belt. Don't blame the function of a power tool like that on the fact that you've been trying to cheap your way out on getting every last grit out of your sanding belts.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think in the shop-made power tool world, they will work as well as they need to work. And like you said, as well as they will be as precise as you build them.
Right.
Whereas a manufactured one might wear better. Cast iron is going to obviously wear better than steel or melamine or whatever. If you, I think it will have a longer lifespan. Is the extra wear and precision that you might get from a machine one better than a shop made one? I don't know. I think completely depends on the shop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But where I was kind of leading to is, I think in the shop made hand tool world, you can, in my opinion, very easily produce a hand tool in your shop that is better than anything you can buy.
Yes.
That's mass produced. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to build a Bailey Stanley style number 4 in my shop that's going to be better than a Lee Nielsen. Mm-hmm. But if you compare, let's say yesterday, so the 3 tools we made, you made a scraper shave, Chris made a marking knife, and I made an awl. Could I go out and buy an awl that is the same quality of what I made yesterday? I don't think I could. Same thing with the scraper shave. Like,
not that you would pay for.
Not that I would pay for. No. Like, I'm sure.
Logan might pay for it, but the most normal people would not.
Yeah, like, and that's fair. Like, I'm sure I could go to like some Japanese blacksmith and have an awl made, or I'm sure you could get a hold of, a custom hand plane manufacturer, Red Rose Reproductions or whatever, and have them make you a scraper shave.
Right.
But if you go to Lee Valley or Woodcraft and you type in scraper shave, if you find one, generally it's going to be like a Taiwanese style, produced. It will work, but it's not going to be the same quality as what Phil made yesterday.
Yeah.
So I guess that is where this whole thing kind of is fun to me, because you can make a tool that works extremely well, better than most things you could buy, for, depending on how much effort you want to put into it, very little effort.
Mm-hmm. Very little material cost.
Exactly.
You can find stuff, the little scraps you've been hoarding around the shop, or some special offcut of an exotic wood, and maybe a few off the shelf pieces of hardware from the hardware store, and you got a custom tool.
And they look better than what you can buy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's which I think is an overlooked part of woodworking that I think that people, they value without necessarily knowing that they value it. Like, good looking tools are fun to work with.
Yeah.
Like there's an enhanced enjoyment. And I think if most of the time a good looking tool ends up being more comfortable to use too. So there's a pleasure in using something like that. Plus you get to make it, and it's totally custom. Even if you're going off of a plan, which we're going to offer the plans for those tools, like your awl has a turned handle on it.
Yep.
Probably anybody else going to turn that turning is going to be subtly different. Even if they were trying to make it exact.
Yes.
But being a turned element like that could very easily be shaped differently to match whatever you want, or just your own personal aesthetic, and now you have a tool that just does not exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
Same thing like with those scraper shaves that you change up the materials that you're using with, change the way that you cut out and shape the handles to feel comfortable for your own grip. Like, bam, new tool.
Yeah. Well, and you can, so the 3 tools we made, the awl, the spoke shaves, or the scraper shaves, and the marking knife. If any one of us were doing those off camera, 2 hours maybe to make them, maybe less. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Not very long. I think the longest part of any of those was when I had to file the hexagon metal into a point, basically, for the awl. I mean, what's cool about that that short of time period to make a tool of these qualities is that you could very easily customize a tool for a very specific task. So like your scraper shaves kind of are the main example here, where you can make the sole completely different shapes. Like, hey, you're working on I'm just pulling it out of the air here, a Windsor chair project, and you need a scraper shave that's going to fit on the turned legs.
Right.
2 hours to custom make a tool for that's going to look good and function really well. Come on, like,
yeah, oh yeah,
2 day shipping, Amazon Prime, screw that.
Well, and not only that, I mean, there's in making a tool, especially if you're, again, depending on the care that you put into it, you are enhancing skills that you will put to use in other projects.
Yep.
Intentionally or not, you're just going to build muscle memory or, familiarity with other tools, like using a bandsaw to shape the curved handles, or, using a file to create smooth, flat, straight surfaces.
Yep.
Like there's a skill in that. Like watching Chris use a file is ridiculous to me, because that man, like he had his knife scales and then the little brass pins that were holding the scales to the blade, and they were proud just a little bit. And he had this file that on camera looked like it was 6 feet long.
Yeah.
And he's just filing across and did not nick the handle at all.
I was watching that too. I was like, I would have totally nicked the handle and
biffed it.
Caused all kinds of trouble.
It slips off, and you make this big furrow on the cross, and it's like, yep, looks like we're going to change the texture of that handle. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. What would you say then would be kind of what are some gateway drugs of shop built tools?
I think a mallet is definitely achievable by about anybody, and you can use scraps and stuff. And
I think it gives you the biggest bang for your buck too.
Oh yeah.
Hold on, I gotta get the media ready for that. I gotta do the clapping. I mean, like it depends on, in my opinion, it depends on how you work in your shop. If you're a hand tool user, if you're hybrid, or if you're a power tool user, like mallets, like John said, that's everybody uses it. I mean, you're not using your table saw to beat together a project. So that's a good one. Layout tools, I think, are always good, right? Like we've done, Woodsmith has done a handful of squares.
Right.
Those are a really good one.
Trammels, beam compasses.
Yep.
Yeah. Marking gauge.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Stuff like those. Those are really good. From a finer tool standpoint, I mean, we use that in air quotes, finer tool standpoint, making hand planes is addictive. Like,
sure.
Like, I don't care if it's an English miter plane. I don't care if it's a block plane. Making a plane and having it work is like, oh, that was cool. Like, I could do that again. I'm going to do that again. So,
yeah. I taught a class for the Des Moines woodworkers on making hand planes, and it was loosely based off the James Krenoff laminated construction of a hand plane. And when we got to the class period where, the bodies were glued up and we've got the pin in place and put the wedge in, so the plane hasn't really been shaped at that point, but you can put the blade in, get it wedged, and try a shaving, even though, like the sole might not be perfectly flat yet. Like there was explosions and angels singing when people took their first shaving with this plane that they made. It's unreal. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that kind of excites me about hand tool making, and I've said this forever, I like really nice tools. You can make a hand tool, you can make a power tool as fancy or as plain as you want.
Right.
Like all I did yesterday had a twisted shank on it, a cast and turned pewter ferrule and then an ebony handle. Like, could I have pounded that all into a dowel and had the same effect? Absolutely. It would have worked no differently.
Right.
But I like the fact that I can make it super fancy with, an hour's worth of work.
Sure.
So, same thing with your scraper shave. Like, you made that out of hickory. It has a really cool look to it. Could you have slapped some hard maple on it, called it good? Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a super fun and very slippery slope, in my opinion. You get these guys that, if you look back to like Henry Studley, the Studley tool chest with everything all fitted together, a lot of those tools he made.
Sure.
And they're like some of the most gorgeous tools you'll ever see. There is also that guy down in, I want to say Argentina, that does like really, really high end. I want to call them restorations, but they're not necessarily restorations, where he like remachines all the parts for like a Stanley 71 router plane, but they're machined out of ivory and brass and chrome plate, like just freaking gorgeous. It's a very slippery slope. And the other thing I really like about making tools is you get to kind of lean into the metalworking world a little bit, which is a fun change. And to me, I always have this picture in my head, or this idea that, wood's easy to work with the right tools. And to me, metal is not easy to work. And I think that is rooted from 9th grade with Mr. Steve Allman at my high school, where we had to hand sand our machinist hammerheads that we made. For a week, I sat there sanding that thing by hand. That's not the case. With the right tools, metal works very easily with the right tools and the right material. So it's fun to me to at least to lean on or lean into the metalworking side of stuff.
Sure. And I also like it because I've found that I can, I've used shop-built tools as a way to upgrade the tools that I have, from some basic ones to ones that either work a little bit better or match the kind of way that I work. Then there's also the blurring of the lines of taking an existing tool and adding to it, either by remaking a part or, like I had a number 3 sized Pexto hand plane that I found at an antique shop, and, the tote and knob were kind of dorked up on it. So I ended up making a new tote and knob for it. That one right there that Logan's holding. So, or hand saws, being able to make a new handle for a handsaw is just kind of a fun process. Mm-hmm. I also think it's cool, even if you go with the shop-built power tool route, is, we had a couple of people that worked here in the past, like Vince and Kent Welsh, had a real affinity for old power tools that they would find at, flea markets and auctions and all that kind of stuff. And they'd fix them up. And vintage power tools have a design style that is almost entirely lacking in the current crop of power tools.
Completely. Like, yeah, you don't get any really cool, like, Art Deco type power tools today.
Yeah. And, making your own tools allows you to have even power tools have a fun look to them. Like that, what was that guy who built the edge sander on YouTube?
Rod Reyes?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he built the edge sander, followed our plans, but his edge sander has a sweet, sweet look to it. The way he painted it and added casters and, styled different elements of it, that even though it's our plan, it's totally Rod's tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he even added like a custom table on the end so it could use it as like a drum sander type tool as well, which is a really good idea. So
yeah, super genius. In fact, I've actually used our edge sander on the end belt or the end roller. Like, oh, we don't have a table over there, but to just kind of freehand curves and refine those shapes. It's kind of genius.
So are there any hand tools or any shop made tools on your guys' bucket lists that you'd like to build? Or second question, are there any tools, power tools or hand tool wise, that you don't think it makes sense to build in your shop? Not worth building. Because I'm going to say, I have seen guys build lathes. I have seen guys build lathes out of, plywood blocks with pillow bearings and a drive shaft with a chuck on it. And they turn some big stuff on that. And they turn some really high quality stuff on that. To me, I'm turning a big 500-pound bowl blank. I want it all cast iron. I don't want any plywood. I don't want any Baltic birch. I don't want no Chinesium plywood underneath that. I want good quality cast steel. I almost said American cast steel, but there's some really good lathes coming out of Canada too, and Germany. So that's one I would not attempt to build, nor would I attempt to build. I've seen guys do it, and I know people do it, and I know we'll get comments. Oh, I did that back in the 70s, and it worked great. Making a table saw out of a circular saw.
Right. Yeah.
Any reason it won't work? No.
No.
It scares me a little bit, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's totally subjective, but,
Yep.
I've seen different folk make big, giant band saws.
Yeah.
Online. There's any number of internet woodworkers that have made shop-made band saws, and they're cool, and I totally get that, but I just don't know that I would do that. As much of a fan of band saws as I am.
Yeah.
And maybe I just need to see theirs and use them at some point, to see somebody's, I don't know. For some reason, I've always thought it would be fun to make a treadle lathe, or a spring pull lathe, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Like Roy Underhill's spring pull lathe. I think the plans were in Popular Woodworking years ago.
That was one of the only issues of any magazine that I actually ever held on to, was that one, because I wanted to build that spring pull lathe. It had Roy on the cover. I could probably tell you exactly which issue it was.
Yeah. And that spring pull lathe design seems really clever to me.
Yeah.
And the problem is that I don't see myself ever turning that much to justify it.
Issue 226, August 16.
Okay. But it would just be fun to make something like that. It would be fun to make. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those that spring pull lathe. Again, I agree with you. I think it would be fun to build. I think it would be a riot, just an absolute hoot to use it. It takes up a lot more room than a similar sized lathe does, and you need the overhead space for the arm to flap.
Yeah.
So, plus I like to turn really fast, and I don't do cardio. So,
right. I mean that there's a different motion to it because it's a reciprocal turning, rather than just a continuous, which I don't think would be that big a deal. But those kind of lathes, you're not using carbide turning tools on. I don't believe. No. I don't think you can do that.
I mean,
maybe you can, and I just don't know. But
you might be able to, but you might as well just chew on the wood to give yourself a finish. So,
I'm also in the process of building what is sort of a dream tool for me in my little slot mortiser.
Okay.
Which also goes to one of your earlier points of, can it be as good as a commercial tool? And if you're coming up with your own design, it's going to take a while.
Oh, yeah.
And even though I'm basing mine off of Chris's version, I'm changing it up enough that it's challenging.
Yeah.
And I'm in a frustration stage on it right now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, you have to go through iterations. So,
yeah.
Well, and a good point of that type of evolution is the Panto router from Matthias Wendell.
I believe so, yeah.
On YouTube, he built it out of wood originally, and now it's built and sold out of aluminum, and we happen to have one. It's phenomenal. I love it. I would never try to build it, but quite clearly, somebody smarter than me did.
Yeah.
So it all starts with a mock-up.
Yeah. How about you, John? Anything you want to make?
I don't think that there's any of like the shop made machines that I would build out of need. It would be more out of just the entertainment of building it and getting to the final stage. Right. So that's kind of my hang up, is not having the space for them and not having the need for them, but just building it and then letting it go. That would be my enjoyment. Kind of like having a Lego set. It's like you build it and then,
then you break it.
Cool. Now it's like, now what?
Yeah.
It's just the enjoyment of building it. So those, I mean, any of Chris's things is just like I would love to build and get it working, and then it's just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid thing. It's if you're going to invest the time and the materials to build one of these shop-made tools, you better make sure not my place to say that to anybody, but you better make sure you're going to use it. At least I would. I don't want to invest the time and materials in building something that I'm not really going to use. Where maybe that's why it's easier for me to build hand tools, because I know I'll use them.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, and I always thought like it would be a fun project to build with my kids, like a smaller version of the Chris's Shop Built CNC, because they do a lot of CNC stuff. Learn about that in school, so it'd be cool to build and have them, do little projects on and use and stuff. But
yeah. Now there is actually, this is maybe one I should build on video at some point. We did a couple. It was before I was here. We did that buffing station.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like I would completely use that for turning. Not turning on it, but like set it up next to my lathe for final buffing on turnings. So
sure,
that would be a good one. Like I think I would use that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was it the wall mounted?
Yeah.
Thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like a big arbor that had, I don't know, 3 or 4 different. You could put 3 or 4 different buffing wheels on.
Yep. Yeah, which would be cool. I mean, because there's like the Beal buffing system for turning and stuff. You could basically do that. That one actually, if I remember right, I just pulled it up. It had a couple grinding wheels on it too for sharpening. And I don't know that I would necessarily use those. Maybe I'd put wire wheels on it instead.
Okay.
But yeah, that'd be a good one. I'd use that one. I've also thought about, and you said it yesterday, Phil, and I don't think I have ever heard you utter these words, that if we decide to get rid of that, I would try to buy it. I don't think I've ever heard you utter those words. But you said that yesterday about that little 2-inch wide belt sander that we have. And I use the crap out of that thing, and I've actually mentioned before that I would like to build that. It was a 2-inch wide by 36-inch, I think, belt sander from ShopNotes, I'm assuming. And the thing works like a freaking champ. Like,
and looks super cool too.
It does. And I understand when people see something like that, and it doesn't look like it's wood because it's hammer painted and it's finished to the nth degree. Yeah. But I understand when people look at something like that, like, it's not as good as one you could buy because it's made out of plywood. It's like, I get it. Not necessarily the best argument, but something like that, you could very easily change it around and build it out of 80-20 extruded aluminum or something. If you wanted. And there's guys in the knife making world that do that all the time. They make these huge belt grinders out of stuff you just basically bolt together.
Right.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we've had that for years and used it a ton and
never changed the belt on it.
Yeah. Now it's just a polisher.
I literally have a couple of knives I was going to use it on yesterday, and I'm like, this is basically a woven mesh belt right now.
Yeah, the back of the belt says it's 120, but the business side of the belt says
it's 1200.
Yep. 1200. Yeah.
So.
No, and the funny part is some of those tools we have that we use in the shop and have out, and when we have people come through on tours, they'll see some of them and like, oh man, where did you buy that? It's like, Chris Fitch, you know.
Yeah. We just fed him and watered him, and he showed up.
Yep. So. All right. John, you're all moved in now.
Yep. It's all there. Anyways, it's all there somewhere.
I was saying, have you started looking at a garage? Like, hey, this is how I need to set it up. That's all we care about. We don't care about the house. I thought about it.
It was more of like, get it all in there so we can park the cars for winter, and I'll deal with this in the spring, and try not to upset anyone right now with a mess in the garage.
Now that I think about it, I think all your stuff gone from here?
No, there's still a router table lurking.
I'm surprised carts did not come.
I got rid of a couple carts to my brother-in-law, so
good.
Cut my carts in half, and I don't know. Still have a router table, some bikes maybe hiding under the stairs somewhere.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing those.
There's still some stuff here, but it'll be gone soon. So, but yeah, I had the tools up and going. I was working on some shelves for the basement and stuff, but not in full production mode yet. Soon. So,
speaking of setting up shop, you did a little land clearing, Logan.
I did. I wasn't planning on it. If you can believe that. I was this weekend, I had a couple of guys come out to my place to saw some logs. It was a great change. Like, I had the sawmill set up in the driveway, and people brought the logs to me. I didn't have to go to them, which was really nice. And like halfway through the morning, my wife walks out of the house. I thought she was leaving. She had a coat on. She had a coffee in her hand, and she brought me out a coffee. I'm like, what did you buy? Because like, that's way out of character. That's too nice. But I got to a point where I had cut the logs I needed to cut for these two guys. They had gone, and I'm like, well, I'm out here. There's sawdust all over. You know, maybe I should. I went and picked up a load of white oak a couple of weeks ago, and I need to cut it for a friend up in Ames. It's like, maybe I should like dig into some of that. I'm like, I'm not going to get it all done today. So instead I just grabbed my chainsaw and I started dropping trees where the shop's going to go. I cut a few smaller trees. I had a couple hackberries and a walnut that were, yay big. I did one bigger elm, and I also have a lift that we're getting this week to do one more tree at your house, Phil. And I will be continuing on some of those bigger trees this weekend. So just kind of taking off some branches off the top before I drop the trunks, because I don't think they touch the house, but better safe than sorry. Let's take a couple of big limbs off first.
Yeah.
And those ones, this last weekend, I took down the trees that were not worth me keeping anything from.
Right.
This weekend I will take down the trees that I will log out. So, yeah.
All right.
So, making progress. I'm so ready to have this shop built. Like, my wife over this last week her birthday was last weekend, so I ordered her a heat press for doing like t-shirts and stuff. And she asked, where is it going to go? And I made the comment on how I had made her this huge built-in desk downstairs in the office that I now occupy. I occupy half that office, but she said, well, when the shop's done, your office is going to go out there, so I'll have the whole office. And I didn't realize that was a thing, but I guess that's the thing now. So it's happening. Yeah. She's starting to take over my space.
So then what happens to your shop in the basement? Does that go to her?
No. So when I built that shop in the basement, I finished it. I pre-wired it for a theater room.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a long, narrower, 14 by 22, 23. But there's no windows in it. So I pulled like 7.1 surround sound wire, put speaker boxes up. I pulled some flex tube to where a projector would go. So maybe, John, when you're buying a projector for your house, we'll do a 2-for-1 deal.
I was going to say, when you get a projector for your house, let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then I'll get one for my house.
Yeah, but no, I preemptively, the plan has always been to build an external shop at my place ever since we started building our house. So I preemptively finished it like a theater room. So it'll require some carpet and, stuff. Popcorn machine. So,
sure.
So yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So next spring's podcast theme will be setting up shop.
Yes.
In 2 different flavors.
Yep. I actually had done it. I had put a couple articles on our Matrix for 2022 on that topic. I mean, everybody's always interested in it.
Right.
So, one of them is going to be dust collection, because that'll be fun. I've never actually had to plumb a large shop for dust collection. So it will be interesting. So I'm going to probably work with Oneida to, we know the folk over at Oneida really well. So we're going to get some expert input on that, I believe.
Yeah.
So that'd be cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps it up for another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, I'd love to hear them. You can put them in the description or in the comment section on our YouTube channel where you can watch this, or email them to us, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Don't forget to subscribe and pass along the podcast to other people who might use it. You'll never wear it out. It'll always come back to you in the exact same condition. You can subscribe to the Shop Notes Podcast from all your favorite small batch podcasteries. And otherwise, we'll see you next week for another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. Bye, everybody. This episode of the Shop Notes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Plans. You'll find nearly 1,000 plans covering everything that you'd want to build, from furniture projects to gift projects, kitchen accessories, workshop projects and jigs, and more. Find your next project at woodsmithplans.com. On today's episode, we'll be talking about shop-made tools and a new product and something new here at Woodsmith. Hope you enjoy the show.
I hope Nate leaves that in.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah.